Good day. Getting the getting the devotional launched a few minutes early today, 5 or 6 minutes early. Just the nature of my day. I'm at that point. I can do this, so I'm doing it. I don't know what your day is going like. I hope it's good. We're getting closer to Christmas, and so I'm sure soon we'll all be starting to think about that, decorating and purchasing gifts or whatever it is we do for that time period. Um, Whatever's going on, blessings. We're going to look at Proverbs chapter 3, verse 9 today. And so I'm just going to dive right into that. So Proverbs chapter 3, verse 9. Now, once again, in the chapter 3 of Proverbs, book of Proverbs, the two verses go together in kind of pairs for much of this chapter. So we're going to be reading two verses, but I'm still going to focus on just the one verse, just as we are every day, just focusing on one verse. But I will need to read both so you can kind of get the flow of thought. So Proverbs 3, verses 9 and 10 is what I'll read, and I'll focus on 9. So it says this: Honor the Lord from your wealth, from the first of all your produce. So your barns will be filled with plenty, and your vats will overflow with new wine. So each of these pairings are do this, see this kind of thing. Like, here's the thing that'll contribute or bring about this consequence, that there's this outcome that occurs. And so that's what these are about. So in verse 9, we see the do this part, and verse 10, which we'll talk about in our next devotional, about, and here's an outcome. So the do this part today, we're focusing on honor the Lord from your wealth and from the first of all your produce. So that's what we're focusing on. And this idea of honoring the Lord from your wealth and from the first of all your produce, so that idea of honoring God with that is talking about these kinds of traditions we have in Christian society, Christian culture, right back to the Judeo-Christian, to the Jewish cultures of the Old Testament, and then brought forward into the Christian cultures now, is this idea of the things God gives us in life, the wealth we get, that we give back some portion of that to God as a way of honoring Him. And it's a very ancient idea, right? Thousands of years old, that we honor God's involvement. Now, if you'll recall, we just talked about the idea of acknowledging God in our life, and then He directs our paths. He makes our path straight. Acknowledging God's place in our life. And so there's a flow of thought even between the verses, the pairings here. There's the acknowledging of God, and then there's the honoring of God. So I take what I've got, the things of my life, the value I have in my life, the produce, all my produce, right? So in those days it'd be the crop of their land, right, or the offspring of their herds or whatever. And they give a portion of that back to God as a way of honoring Him. They give it in various ways, whether it be a sacrifice of their day or some sort of putting it to the use of God's kingdom, as we might do today. That kind of thing. And so we have traditions like the tithe or the Sabbath or things of this nature, where we honor God with the stuff that He has blessed us with the produce that's come from the land, or from our work, from our hands, or from our time. So we do this, and it's a very important practice to have. Far more important than I will be able to really emphasize in this one video, but I just want to emphasize that it's a really important practice, and far too many people skip this practice of honoring God with the tithe and Sabbath in particular, but the various other things as well. But just the way we take our wealth and we redirect some portion of it right back to God and honor Him. The spiritual benefit of that, the practical benefit of that is beyond what I can express in this short video. I'm going to express at least some of it today. So let's move on to our 4 questions. Question 1, why does honoring God mean giving to God? Why would that be the case? Can we honor God in some other way? And I would say not really, because honoring always means giving. It's just what you're giving, right? So basically, when you want to put someone in a place of honor, you do something that gives them a place of honor, and that requires a taking from yourself and giving to them. It's not really possible to honor somebody without giving something to them. So, for instance, you give someone a salute. You think about that. Well, you're giving a salute. Now, that may not be very much to it, but you're honoring someone's rank, perhaps, or some action someone's done. Even an opponent, you can honor their strength, but with a salute. And you think, well, that's not much. What are you giving? Well, you're giving them a physical action of acknowledgement and recognition that's meant to convey. So it takes you only a moment of time, but it is a giving. You're giving of that attention, and you're giving of respect in expressing that. So that's a very small version. Another example that might be a bow, right? You bow to someone. You like in many of the Asian cultures, bowing was a big part of that, or the where I can't remember what that's called, but in some of the other Asian cultures, there's just different ways we've done this. Even the etiquette of Western culture has an honoring aspect when you call someone Mr. So and so. Like it's just a small thing, but you give them a title, and by giving that title, there's an aspect of honor. And so there's this idea, and all of those are very, very simple and easy ways of honoring somebody. But an even greater way of honoring somebody would be like what we do on birthdays, or when we do the anniversaries and we honor somebody's achievements, or we look at these award ceremonies we have where we honor someone's achievements. A lifetime achievement award is something we give, and we want honor. And the more you give, the bigger the honor you're bestowing on someone. You give them a special seat at your table, or you give them a space on your wall with a picture of them or whatever. And the more pride of place you give them, the more you do in the giving, the more honor you bestow. And there's all kinds of worthy causes in our world, all kinds of worthy people for different types of honor. But of all the people who ever get honor in our life, the one that should be at the very highest level of honor should be God, I would think. The one who gave you life, sustains your life, guides your life, and ultimately will give you eternal life if you're in him. Who else deserves honor on the scale that he would deserve it? And so the gifts of our wealth, and the gifts of our time, the gifts of our obedience, the gift of our heart to honor God makes perfect sense. Question 2, what does it mean to tithe? I mentioned 2 particular types of giving honor to God. I mentioned tithing. Well, what is that about? Well, the scriptures refer to this idea of tithe, of taking 10% of your wealth that you have earned. So you've worked in your life. Now, in those days, it would be farming mostly. But you think, well, working in your life with farming, and you grow a field full of grain, or an orchard full of fruit or whatever. And of all that, the idea of the tithe was as you're harvesting all that, you would take 10% of it, 1/10 of it, at the very beginning, the first 10%. We'll talk about that in a minute, but you would take that out, and that would be given to God, either by giving it to his priests, or by offering some sort of sacrifice, or giving it to the poor, or whatever. There was different ways that you could do that. But the idea was that you didn't keep it for yourself. You gave it to God's purpose, and that was a way of honoring him, saying, this harvest comes because of your grace. And so I honor you by giving of the first of my harvest, of the work of my hands, of the work of my life. So in our modern day, there's less and less farmers every generation, it seems, which is a bit of a shame. But in our modern day, our primary thing is kind of our money. So I give 10% of my money, for instance, to the Lord. Every time I get a paycheck, I give him 10% because I want to honor him. He helped me earn that money. So I want to, if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have the life I have. So I honor him 10%. That's the idea of the tithe. What's the idea? Question 3, what is the idea? What's the Sabbath idea? That's with my time. So tithe is my wealth of things, and Sabbath is the wealth of time I have. And so you think God gave me a life, and so 1 in 7 of my days I give to him. I have a Sabbath day, and that I set apart and just make it different. I rest in it. It's good for me. I regenerate, but it's not just a vacation day. It's a day of honoring God. And so 1 in 7 days I set apart to him, and I honor him. I give him honor by giving that day in some way to him, whether it be spending extra time in prayer or going to church, is one of the things I do. I go to church and I say, God, I'm going to give this morning to you as part of my Sabbath exercise of just honoring you with my life. And so we do this. We have these means of honoring God. God doesn't need my tithe. God doesn't need my time. But it's a way for me to honor him and say, here, so what's the gift you can give to somebody who has everything? Oh, like God, give him a sacrifice of yourself, give him a sacrifice of your time and your money and the things of your life, and that's honors him. It gives him that honor. So that's what we should do, and that's what this verse is saying. So the last part of this, 4th question, is why is it the first? This verse says to give him of the first. And the answer is very simple, but something we don't often think about. When you're going to give God a gift, you're giving God a gift. Why would you ever give God your leftovers? Right? It shouldn't be the last, right? Like whatever, I harvested my whole field, and here I've got enough for me. I got enough for my neighbors. I got enough for my cows. I want to hear, God, this is for you. Like, that's not honoring God, right? It might be, but it's not very much honor for God. Instead, we give God the best. Give him the best. And you don't pick through it and you say, I'm going to give I'm going to give God all the stuff that looks like it's maybe a little spoiled or it's overripe or something. No, you don't give God the worst, and you don't give God the leftovers. You give God the best. You give him the first. As you collect it, you give him the first of it. You say, here it is. This is for you. Lord, you deserve this. King David once said he wanted to give God a sacrifice, and he came to this guy, and the guy said, oh, sure, you want to give God a sacrifice? Look, here's my mill. You can have my oxen for the sacrifice. You can have the mill for the wood for the fire. And he offered to give it to David for the sacrifice so that he could offer it as a sacrifice. And King David said to the man, no, I'll buy it from you. He said, no, you're the king. You can have it. He said, no, I will buy it from you because I will not give to God that which cost me nothing. And that's the way, that's what our attitude should be. Is like, no, God, I give you the first because if anybody's worthy of the best of what I got or the first of what I got, and instead of the leftovers, well, it's God, right? So you do that, and you honor God. So here's the thing: one of two things will happen. You will either honor God with your wealth somehow, or you will honor your wealth as if it were God, and that's something to think about. So for you today, ask yourself the question: how do you honor God from your wealth, and how do you honor God with the first of what you do in your life? And you should spend some time. I would recommend spending some real time just thinking about how do I do that and making a plan. And tomorrow or whenever we get our next devotional, we'll talk about one of the wonderful consequences of having that habit in your life. And yeah, we'll do that. So God bless you in your efforts to honor him. God willing, I will have a devotional. I may not get one tomorrow, Wednesday. It may not happen tomorrow. But on Thursday, hopefully, God willing, we'll have one, or Friday for sure, or whatever. But just stick with me. This over the Christmas season, I'm going to have a little more hit and miss because I'm trying to get a Christmas program going here at the church, and I'm also trying to take some vacation. So it's a trickier time for me, but I will be making every effort to get in here and give these devotionals. So God willing, tomorrow or the next day, we'll do verse 10. Have a great day. I guess it's time to start saying Merry Christmas.